In the lead up to the 2020 presidential election, we are keeping tabs on the candidates' movements with a new segment called 2020 Daily Trail Markers. It will feature reporting from our CBS News campaign reporters and producers who are on the ground with the campaigns. Wednesday, we're taking a look at the campaign of former Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper. The New York Times reported Tuesday Hickenlooper was mulling an end to his presidential campaign to enter Colorado's Senate race. CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns asked him about potentially dropping out of the race last weekend at the Iowa State Fair.
Some people have said they want you to run for Senate in Colorado. Is that something, you said you didn't want to do it before, is that something that you're maybe starting to reconsider?
Well, I'm trying to maintain my focus, because I think if I'm going to have any chance running for president, I've got to be 100% focused. So I literally, when people ask, my staff asks, we are focused on right now, who are we interviewing with today? What are we doing this afternoon? Who do we talk to tonight? What are we doing tomorrow? You know, trying to keep 100% focused. So I'm just brushing it out of the way.
But what would it take to make that decision? Would it be not making the debate stage next time around? Kind of how are you figuring that out? Well,
it would be to begin answering questions like that, where I start considering, well, what are my parameters? How do I decide? I haven't done that, right? At some point I will, and I realize that is a legitimate question for you to ask, and something that I will get to.
Let's bring in now CBS News campaign reporters Bo Erickson and Stephanie Ramirez. They both join me from our Washington bureau. Welcome, Stephanie and Bo. Stephanie, let me start with you. You covered John Hickenlooper's campaign. What are you hearing from the campaign about this potential drop out of the race for the White House and run for Senate?
Well, I love that you played that interview just now, because I do want to bring up something he said in the interview, talking about being focused and having his staff focused as well. We need to talk about his staff, because that plays into the history of his campaign since he launched, and the history more recently. So I can tell you in early July, CBS News had confirmed that 6 senior-level staff members decided to leave the campaign. And we are hearing from sources who affirmed what we were hearing at the time, that someone close to the campaign is telling us that the staffers before this happened had approached Hickenlooper with some kind of guidance on possibly running for Senate had he decided to do so. But the messaging from the campaign was always that no, that he is going to run for the presidential race. He did have a little issue on TV in an interview, partially blaming his staff for why he wasn't doing so well in the polls. But he stayed in the race. And then now in early August is when things really started to ratchet up. That is, ColoradoPolls.com. They had reported that a couple of Hickenlooper Senate domains, like hickforsenate.com, had been secured. We checked with the campaign again. They said that this had nothing to do with them. They had no knowledge of this, that he was still in it. He's running for president. August 6th, the Gazette reported that Hickenlooper went on a satellite radio interview and said that he had never ruled anything out, which seemed to be really the first time that he was opening the doors to possibly leaving the 2020 presidential run. And then it gets interesting. The Washington Post had reported just 6 days ago that Hickenlooper would have a difficult time if he were to jump into the Colorado Senate race, because the Senate race is full. The people who are running in that race are not willing to step aside for Hickenlooper, even though he is a popular person there. And on top of that, they also raise significant money running in their own races. But then on the flip side of that, we see on Sunday the Denver Post posted polling saying that Hickenlooper has a significant lead over the Democrats running in the Colorado Senate race. So we're seeing mixed messaging, but if you look at these reports, it looks like the pressure is on, and we may be seeing something sooner than later. But this is definitely not going to go away by any means.
All right. So, Bo, you spoke with 100 Democratic voters at the Iowa State Fair last weekend and asked who they are supporting. We should note that none of them picked Hickenlooper. What else did you find out?
Yeah, and as Stephanie knows, Hickenlooper talks a lot on the trail about starting a brew pub in Denver. So I went to the craft beer tent, and I still didn't find any Hickenlooper supporters there. But what I heard over and over again, and the name that was kept being repeated, was no one specifically at all. 40 out of the 100 people that I spoke to are undecided right now, and it's for 2 reasons. One, it's early. They say they were focused on things like family camping instead of political campaigning. And then the second thing is that they kept saying is that there's just too many candidates right now in the race. It's dizzying. It's almost demotivating Democrats from participating in the process right now. They want the field to dwindle down before they start picking their favorite horse. The candidates that were mentioned the most there was Joe Biden. He had 23 out of the 100. And then it went on from Warren with 13, Sanders with 9, Harris with 5, Buttigieg, and then Tom Steyer had 3. And all 3 of those people said that they know him from his impeachment ads that he ran in the state starting last year.
All right. So, Bo, aside from the candidates, then, what are the issues that those Iowa Democratic voters told you they're most concerned about?
2 big issues here. One, healthcare, which we have heard voters talk about all throughout the country, but most of the voters that I spoke with, they favor fixing Obamacare, and they support that public option, being able to buy into a Medicare-like program. Some of the undecideds, though, did say that they are open to a single-payer system like Medicare for all. And then the second big issue that over and over, no matter if you're in the sheep barn or in that craft beer tent, or I was with some ladies knitting as well, they were bringing up the economy. And the thing that they kept mentioning over and over again was this trade war with China, and both rural and urban living Iowans are worried that we have not started feeling the full effects of that trade war yet.
All right. And then did you speak to some Iowa Republicans as well? What do they say?
Of course, I spoke to Iowa Republicans. I spoke to dozens of them, actually, and the one word that they kept repeating was socialism. They think all the Democrats are socialist, and so that message has really went all the way from the president to people down in Iowa.
It stuck just the way that the president was hoping it would, I guess. All right, so a recent piece in Politico magazine profiled Senator Kamala Harris's campaign in Iowa. The article says, in part, quote, Iowa, a state that some thought she was ignoring in favor of South Carolina, has become an unexpectedly promising target for Harris. So, Stephanie, you also cover Harris's campaign. How is she campaigning in Iowa? And does it appear as if her campaign has changed its strategy for that state?
Yeah, so I just got off the bus. She did a 5-day bus tour through Iowa with 16 stops. We weren't with ladies knitting, but I can tell you that different stops, retail politics in all of its glory. 11 different counties in 5 different days. And when you talk about the criticism that Harris faced, that was in May. She had to cancel a trip to Iowa because of a disaster aid vote in the Senate. And before this 6-day tour, she had only made 6 stops to the state. So that's where the criticism came from. But when she started this bus tour, we saw some significant action here. It wasn't just the on-the-ground campaign. She also did something on the air, where the campaign had announced on day 1 of the tour that they had a 6-figure digital and TV ad buy, which was the largest in the state by a top-tier candidate, or the first in the state by a top-tier candidate for this race, according to our campaign embeds reporters in the state there. And so she really hit the ground running, making sure that she had an impact to reverse any ideas that people had of her campaign. And also in the middle of that trip, there was a huge endorsement. 2 people, a couple, they are a power couple in the state of Iowa. One is a former Democratic chair, a party chair. The other one is a former lawmaker in Iowa. And they both endorsed Harris. And what they told me, Stu Dvorsky told me, that is that she did so to let people know that it's okay to make a decision, because before then, a lot of what we were hearing was that, oh, it's still early and people are still shopping around for their candidate.
All right. So then what are the voters there in Iowa saying about her? Did you speak with several of them?
Oh, absolutely. Every chance we got, I was talking with voters. And it's very interesting that, in the polls, Harris is behind. She has a lot of work to do. But when you hear them, as Bo mentioned, health care is a priority. But you would hear, oh, yeah, we're not too sure about her Medicare for All plan, but we do like her questioning. And that was something very interesting. People were talking about her debate performance, not the second debate performance, the first one where she had confronted Vice President Biden, former Vice President Biden, and also they were looking at her questioning a lot of what we've seen online going viral on her Senate Judiciary Committee hearing questioning, especially the more recent one where she questioned Attorney General Barr. So there was a lot going on there, but mostly people are looking at her as someone who could take on President Trump. And in addition to that, they say she's a fierce questioner, that she's maybe, you know, one of three that they're considering. But they also say they're going to get behind whoever wins the Democratic nominee this time around, which is very different from the last.
All right. Well, Bo Erickson and Stephanie Ramirez, thank you both for joining us.
Thanks, Tanya.